If you are over 60 and even considering opening your heart to a new romantic relationship, I want you to stop for just a moment and listen carefully. Because the greatest emotional danger at this stage of life is not being alone. It is slowly disappearing inside a relationship that takes more than it gives. Many women believe that love later in life should feel easier, gentler, and safer. After all, you've already done the hard years. You've raised families, survived heartbreak, sacrificed, compromised, and carried emotional weight for decades. So it feels reasonable to think that companionship now would finally feel peaceful. But what many women quietly discover and rarely admit out loud is something far more painful. They feel taken for granted faster than ever before. They feel emotionally responsible again. They feel unseen, unheard, and slowly reduced to someone else's comfort system. And the fear that creeps in is subtle but terrifying. What if I gave my peace away and didn't even realize it until it was gone? At this stage of life, emotional loss hits differently. You don't recover as quickly from disappointment. You don't have the energy for emotional chaos, and you certainly don't want to spend your precious years managing someone else's moods, needs, or expectations. The most heartbreaking thing I hear from women over 60 is this: I was happier before he came into my life. Not because love is wrong, but because the wrong kind of love costs too much now. So before you invite someone into your carefully rebuilt world, you must understand the emotional risks that no one warns you about. Because choosing companionship without awareness can quietly steal the very peace you worked your whole life to earn. And once that peace is gone, it is far harder to get back. One of the most misunderstood truths about relationships later in life is this: emotional labor does not disappear with age. It often becomes heavier. Many women over 60 enter relationships believing that maturity will bring emotional balance, mutual understanding, and ease. But what frequently happens is quite the opposite. Because you are wiser, more patient, and more emotionally aware, you end up carrying more of the emotional weight, not less. Emotional labor means being the one who notices changes in mood, who asks the difficult questions, who remembers important details, and who softens conflict before it escalates. It means managing not only your own emotions, but often someone else's as well. Women at this stage of life are deeply skilled at this. You've spent decades doing it for partners, children, coworkers, and families. And when you enter a romantic relationship after 60, many men unconsciously expect you to continue playing that role. What makes this particularly draining now is that your emotional energy is no longer unlimited. You have learned the value of peace, stability, and emotional safety. Yet suddenly, you may find yourself once again soothing irritation, overlooking inconsistency, or explaining basic emotional needs, all while telling yourself, this is just how relationships work. But here is the quiet danger. Emotional labor given without emotional reciprocity slowly erodes self-worth. When you are always the one adapting, listening, and understanding, you begin to shrink emotionally. You may stop expressing disappointment because it feels easier not to. You may silence your needs to avoid conflict. Over time, this creates a deep sense of loneliness, even while being in a relationship. Psychologically, this happens because many men entering relationships later in life are seeking comfort, stability, and care, not emotional growth. They are often tired, set in their ways, and resistant to change. Meanwhile, women over 60 are still evolving emotionally. This mismatch creates an invisible imbalance where one person gives and the other receives. The tragedy is not that women are capable of emotional labor, it's that they are expected to give it endlessly. At this stage of life, love should feel supportive, not demanding. It should add lightness, not weight. If a relationship requires you to constantly manage emotions, yours and his, then it is not companionship. It is caretaking in disguise. And if emotional labor is draining now, wait until you see how quickly it can begin to steal something even more precious, your peace. One of the most profound psychological shifts that happens after 60 is a change in what truly matters. Earlier in life, romance often felt essential, something to chase, build, and hold on to, even when it required sacrifice. But with age comes clarity. Peace becomes priceless. Emotional calm, predictable routines, and inner stability are no longer luxuries. They are necessities. And yet, many women underestimate how easily a romantic relationship can disrupt the very peace they worked decades to create. At this stage of life, your nervous system is no longer designed for emotional turbulence. You don't recover quickly from conflict, uncertainty, or emotional inconsistency. What once felt exciting, unpredictability, intensity, emotional highs and lows, now feels draining. Even small disruptions can linger emotionally for days. This is not weakness. It is wisdom shaped by experience. Many women enter late-life relationships believing companionship will naturally bring comfort. But what often happens instead is the quiet return of stress. Adjusting schedules, negotiating preferences, managing expectations, explaining boundaries that were once respected. Suddenly, your mornings, evenings, and emotional rhythms are no longer fully your own. Psychologically, peace is linked to a sense of control and self-trust. After 60, women finally reclaim both. A romantic relationship can subtly undermine this by introducing obligation disguised as intimacy. You may feel pressure to be available, agreeable, or accommodating, not because you want to, but because you don't want to appear difficult or ungrateful. The danger is not obvious conflict. It is low-grade emotional disturbance, the constant background tension of having to consider someone else's moods, preferences, or reactions. Over time, this erodes joy. You may find yourself longing for the quiet you once took for granted. There is also a cultural myth that being alone equals being lonely. But many women over 60 discover the opposite. They feel lonelier in relationships that disrupt their peace than they ever did on their own. Solitude can be healing. Emotional stability can be nourishing. A calm life is not empty. It is full of self-respect. Choosing peace does not mean rejecting love. It means refusing chaos. It means understanding that romance is only valuable if it protects your emotional well-being rather than challenges it. And when peace is compromised for too long, something else begins to happen. Something that quietly changes how you see yourself. One of the most painful experiences women report in later life relationships is not conflict, it is invisibility. Being taken for granted after 60 happens quietly, quickly, and often without malicious intent. Many men entering relationships at this stage are looking for comfort, familiarity, and ease. Unfortunately, when comfort becomes expectation, appreciation often disappears. In the beginning, attention feels validating. Compliments, interest, and companionship can feel refreshing, especially after years of independence. But because older women are often emotionally generous, reliable, and low drama, their effort is quickly assumed rather than acknowledged. Consistency becomes normal, care becomes invisible, and gratitude fades. Psychologically, this occurs because people value what feels scarce. When a woman is emotionally available, accommodating, and stable, her presence is subconsciously labeled as secure. While security is essential, it can also lead to complacency. The partner stops checking in emotionally, stops making small efforts, stops expressing appreciation, not because he doesn't care, but because he assumes she will always be there. For women over 60, this dynamic is especially painful because they are no longer seeking validation, they are seeking respect. And being taken for granted feels deeply disrespectful. You may notice that your contributions are overlooked, your time is assumed, your flexibility is expected. When this happens, many women internalize the experience, telling themselves they are too sensitive or expecting too much. But emotionally, being taken for granted activates an old wound, the fear of being unimportant. At this stage of life, that wound cuts deeper. You have already proven your worth through decades of responsibility and resilience. To feel unappreciated now feels like emotional erasure. What makes this even more dangerous is how quickly women adapt. You may lower expectations, stop asking for effort, minimize your disappointment. Over time, you begin to accept emotional neglect as normal. This is not resilience, it is self-abandonment. Relationships later in life should feel intentional, not automatic. Appreciation should be expressed, not assumed. Effort should be mutual, not one-sided. When appreciation disappears, connection slowly dissolves, leaving behind emotional distance masked as stability. Being taken for granted is not about age. It is about imbalance. And imbalance, if unaddressed, slowly drains joy, confidence, and emotional safety. And when appreciation fades long enough, the next loss is even more subtle. You begin to lose yourself. For many women over 60, one of the greatest emotional victories is finally reclaiming their sense of self. After decades of roles, caregiver, partner, parent, provider, there comes a quiet but powerful moment when life feels like it belongs to you again. Your time is your own. Your routines reflect your preferences. Your identity feels settled, authentic, and earned. This hard-won freedom is deeply precious, yet it is also surprisingly fragile inside a romantic relationship. The loss of freedom rarely happens dramatically. It begins subtly through small compromises that seem reasonable at first. Adjusting your schedule to match his, choosing activities you are less interested in because it keeps the peace, silencing personal preferences to avoid appearing inflexible. None of these actions feel dangerous individually, but over time they accumulate, quietly shifting your life away from yourself. Psychologically, women are conditioned to adapt. After 60, that conditioning does not disappear, even when awareness grows. Many women fear being labeled difficult, ungrateful, or selfish if they assert their independence, so they accommodate. They adjust. They minimize their own needs. What they don't realize is that each small adjustment pulls them further from the life they intentionally rebuilt. Identity loss later in life feels different than it did earlier. It is not about losing potential, it is about losing presence. You may notice that you stop doing things that once brought joy. You hesitate before making plans that don't involve him. You feel a quiet internal resistance when choosing yourself. This is not love. It is self-erasure disguised as compromise. Emotionally, freedom is tied to self-respect. When autonomy is slowly surrendered, resentment often follows, but resentment in later life relationships is rarely expressed openly. Instead, it turns inward, showing up as fatigue, irritation, or emotional numbness. You may begin to feel disconnected from yourself without fully understanding why. A healthy relationship should integrate into your life, not replace it. Love should allow space for individuality, not require its sacrifice. At this stage, your identity is not something to negotiate, it is something to protect. Many women believe that choosing independence means choosing isolation, but independence is not loneliness. It is alignment. It is the freedom to live in a way that feels true, grounded, and emotionally safe. And once identity begins to fade, the final truth becomes unavoidable. Not all companionship is worth the cost. One of the most liberating realizations women over 60 come to is that companionship and romantic attachment are not the same thing. Society has long conditioned women to believe that emotional fulfillment must come from a romantic partner. But with age and experience, many discover a quieter truth. Connection can exist without obligation, intimacy without sacrifice, and fulfillment without surrendering peace. At this stage of life, emotional needs change. What many women truly desire is not romance, but presence. Not intensity, but reliability. Not being chosen, but being understood. These needs are often met more consistently through friendships, community, shared interests, and meaningful routines than through romantic relationships that demand compromise. Psychologically, companionship is about emotional safety. It is the freedom to be yourself without performance or pressure. Romantic relationships often introduce expectations, emotional availability, time commitment, adaptability that may no longer align with your priorities. Companionship, on the other hand, allows connection without requiring you to rearrange your life or identity. Many women fear that choosing not to pursue a romantic relationship means choosing isolation, but this fear is rooted in outdated narratives. In reality, women over 60 often experience their most authentic connections outside of romance. Friendships deepen, conversations become more honest, emotional support becomes mutual rather than one-sided. There is also a profound shift in self-trust that happens when a woman realizes she does not need romantic validation to feel whole. Self-worth becomes internal. Confidence becomes quiet and grounded. You stop asking, "Am I wanted?" and start asking, "Am I at peace?" This shift is powerful because it removes pressure. When companionship is chosen freely rather than sought out of fear, it becomes nourishing rather than draining. You engage because you want to, not because you feel incomplete without it. Choosing not to have a boyfriend does not mean closing your heart. It means opening it in a way that protects your emotional well-being. It means honoring your needs without apology. It means recognizing that love takes many forms, and not all of them require sacrifice. The deepest fulfillment later in life often comes from alignment, not attachment, from freedom, not obligation, from connection that supports who you are, not who you are expected to be. And when you finally release the belief that love must look a certain way, you open the door to the most peaceful chapter of your life yet. If this message touched something inside you, I want you to pause and honor that feeling. It didn't come from fear, it came from clarity. And clarity is something women over 60 have earned through experience, resilience, and deep emotional wisdom. For many years, you were taught that love meant compromise, endurance, and putting yourself second. But at this stage of life, love looks different. It looks like peace. It looks like self-respect. It looks like choosing relationships or choosing solitude based on how they make you feel, not on what society expects of you. If you've ever felt drained, invisible, or smaller inside a relationship, please know this. You were not asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong person. And recognizing that is not failure, it is growth. I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Whether you've chosen independence, companionship without romance, or are still deciding what feels right for you, your voice matters. Your story may be exactly what another woman needs to hear today. If this conversation resonated with you, please like this video so it reaches women who are quietly questioning the same things. Subscribe to this channel for thoughtful, psychologically grounded guidance on relationships, boundaries, and emotional well-being at every stage of life. And if you know someone who needs permission to choose peace over pressure, please share this message with her. This is Dr. Elina reminding you, your life does not need to be fuller, it needs to be truer.